Okay, hello members, it's LA. I want to take and keep updating this trade on the PSQ. I've got the NDX up. The reason I'm looking at the NDX is that's the underlying index that we're trading against. So we're not really trading against the quote-unquote QQQ so much as we're trading against the NDX. That's the underlying. And so you always want to look at your underlying if you can. The trade that we took, if you remember I started this video, it was right here at the end of this day. It has pushed up since then. Had we been a little bit more patient, right, we could have got a better entry, and that better entry would have been this area as I described in the previous video. It was in that area. Had we waited there, right, we would have been actually ideally we'd been even or in the money at this point. But we didn't, and sometimes that's what happens. So now the question is where is this thing going to go next? So that's how we got here. The question is, where is it, now what is it doing, and where is it going to go next? Now, if you look at this closely, what's happening today is you actually have an over-under forming. So you had this straight move up, right? And now you actually have price go over, back under, and it looks like it's going to close under today, the previous day's high. And that was after we had this straight, fast move to the upside. And so you had this push. Now the over-under, that's what you would expect on this kind of an angle. You get it. If it ends up with less volume, that will be a 2-bar reversal on a very short-term time frame and should lead to another day to the downside. Now, the next question you have to ask is, where does it go, right? Where can it go to? Well, the ideal place, of course, was back here. I don't know if it'll get that deep. The first place is the bar itself, right? It has to stay under this bar today. So in other words, we want it to stay under the price of this high. And so if we look at that number, is 4178.64. So you want the close to be under that. If it is, right, then you've got a pretty good chance that this thing's going to trade lower, and then you can start thinking of where can it go. The ideal places, or the ideal place, is the lower one, but realistically one has to consider that it actually might only trade back to this area. So we have two places, right? We have this and we have that. Now remember, this got over the retest regenerate zone, so that's a strike against us by shorting it. Now, as I said yesterday in the video, is like, not only does it need to get over it needs to hold it for a bar to make me believe it. Well, if it doesn't hold it today, then it hasn't held it for a bar. And so from a perspective of, a trading perspective, it could get deeper on a retrace, or it may just have the partial retrace, but we have to identify where those areas are because we're going to want to pay attention to them as they come back. Now, why did I choose that bar? Well, that's where the next set of volume is. And so that was the bar on the way down. You got to bounce. That's where the volume is. It's about halfway back, so forth, right? 3/4 of the way back, or a third of the way back. So that's kind of the setup here. That's what could happen. Now, let's just take a couple more things real quick. What else would that do? If you did do that retrace and you came back to this point, you could do an ABCD structure to the upside. So that's one possibility. Another possibility of what's going on, and you're always playing these things out through your head, another possibility is that you actually have a bounce that's going to be an ABCD structure to the downside. Now, that one doesn't look quite as clean as the other one, but it's a possibility. So that's another possibility of what could happen. Finally, the last thing I would ask myself is, okay, now that we've got kind of an over-under taking place, what other supporting evidence do we have at this point in the day where we have about 2 hours left in the trading day? So I flipped over here to the QQQ, and one thing you can do is you can look at the volume on the Qs as compared to the prior day, right? If you can't get volume on the index, which you can't, or if you have futures access, you could go look at the futures markets. Right now, it looks to me like that volume is going to come in lighter. And so with lighter volume, that's going to be a 2-bar reversal versus just an over-under. So that's one thing that we have that's going for us with this trade probably by the end of the day. The second thing is we could go look at the DAX. If you remember, the DAX was important. And the reason it's important right now is we're trading lockstep with it. And the DAX is caught in this ugly downtrend, right? Each time it lifts, it gets sold off. Each time it lifts, it gets sold off. And we're wondering if that's going to be the case again. How do we know If that's possible, well, we look and see where the bearish retest regenerate is. And in this case, it's the top of that bar, which was the swing point low that was broken, 94.90.45. What happened today? You get over it, you get back under it. I think the volumes were lighter today. I don't have that for exactly. I won't know until a little bit later, but they look like they were. So that is what? That's a test failure to get over the retest regenerate zone. What does that mean? That means this thing is going to try tomorrow to regenerate lower. So that's the setup here on the DAX. So you've got the DAX saying, hey, we may want to trade lower. You've got the NQs, the NDX, the Qs, the IXIC, the Russell, all of those traded over that retest regenerate zone yesterday, but they're pulling back into it today. So again, that feeds into this ideal of a short potentially working. And then we have our target zones that we're looking at on the NQs, right? The NDX, which would bring it back, the NDX, not the NQs, the NDX, that would bring it back to this low of about 40.85. That's our first area that we're going to have to look at, and that's where we're going to have to be very attentive and decide what we want to do. And a large part of that is going to be made by the decision tonight if we have lower volume or not, and we really have a two-bar reversal. So that's where the trade is right now. At this particular point in time, it's still a losing trade. We didn't actually put anything else on. And that's the next question is, like, do you put something on at the very end of the day here if it is a two-bar reversal? And the answer to that is, yeah, you probably should. And so what we're going to do is we're going to look at how this trades in the end of the day and potentially put a trade on. I will jot that in LA's room that you can pick up on it if you're doing this trade with me, or if it's just educational, that gives you that information, and that data will be, I'll regurgitate that data tomorrow if we did or didn't. That's it for today. Thanks.